hope that you're doing well. I am so excited to be filming this video. As you can see, we're in a bit of a different location. I got a brand new bookshelf that I'm so happy about. I can expand my collection. This is obviously not all of my books. These are just some of my favorite books, some of my read books, and all of my personal development books up at the top. You can't really see it that well, but yeah, all my personal development books are up there. And then some of my favorite books that I read are down here. And then these are all of my contemporary books that are in rainbow order, but I kind of had to move some stuff around because I took some off from my TBR shelf. But anyways, I'm rambling. I love my new bookshelf. It is so incredible and I love it so much. But other than that, I messed with the angle, didn't I? I did. Let's see. That's better. Today I'm going to be talking about my 5 favorite books of this quarter. So my top 5 favorite books that I read in January, February, and March. And this quarter for reading for me was incredible. For this quarter, I read a total of 54 books, I believe. It was a ton. I had a blast getting back into this hobby that I totally forgot that I had. And it's just been so fun and exciting and different. And I have loved it so much. So yeah, I didn't think that picking my 5 favorite books was going to be as easy as it was, but looking at my 5 stars and picking them out, I just knew the ones that I want to talk about today. So the books that I'm going to talk about, I have 2 books that I don't physically own, but hope to be getting very, very soon. And then I have 3 books here that I can show you physically. So I'm going to start with the 2 books that I don't own quite yet. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is We're Gonna Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. This is a memoir about her life that was just so phenomenal. It talks about her life from, I think, as young as 7 or 8 all the way up until I believe present day. But it was just so incredible. This is a book that I read, and for the first time I understood what people say when they feel like a book just really saw them. And this was that book for me. This book talked about so many topics that I relate to in my own life, and just so many things that I didn't know I could connect to so much until I read that book. And this book talks a lot about what it's like being a Black woman in a predominantly white, for her it was a white society. She lived with a lot of white people in her life that she just felt like she didn't fit in. She wasn't white enough to understand the life that she was living, and so she tried to conform and mold into what people of her society wanted her to be. And then on the total flip side, in the summers, she would go live with her aunt, and that community was predominantly Black. And because she had spent so much time trying to conform to the white community, she now felt like she wasn't Black enough. And that's just something that I really, really related with, and something that really resonated with me and hit me in just such a place that made understanding it like no other. There are some trigger warnings in this book for sexual assault, rape, murder. So if that's not something that you're comfortable with, I would definitely say steer clear of this book because it is talked about in some detail. But other than that, if that doesn't bother you too much to read about, I think this is a phenomenal book. There's so many things that I learned, lessons that I've learned, topics that I didn't even know you could gain so much from by listening to a memoir, and it was just phenomenal. If I would totally 100% 5 out of 5 recommend. It was an incredible book, and I think that everybody should read it. And so the next book that I'm going to talk about is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and this was her debut novel. And this was her debut novel, and I thought that it was fan-freaking-tastic. I loved this book so much. So this is about 2 boys who, one is the son of the United States president, the other is the son of the royal family, and at the beginning of the book they hate each other, and they get into this big scene at a royal wedding, and because of that scene they are forced to do a publicity stunt to show the world that they are best friends. And after that they grow their relationship, and they have this incredible romance that takes place, and I thought that it was so great. On top of it being a male-male romance, which I think is incredible that we're seeing that representation in a book, the politics in this book were balanced really well with the romance. The way that the characters developed and change throughout the story was phenomenal. I love these characters so much, and I thought that this book was hilarious and heartwarming and funny and sad at some points, and I had all the feels while reading this book, and I just thought that it was so incredible. I know this book is very beloved in the booktube community and is very talked about, and I think that is for good reason. I feel like this book is phenomenal. It has great representation, and the way that this book was put together just makes you love the characters and love reading about this story. And overall, I can't wait for more of her books. I think that it was a phenomenal story. I think everyone should read it. I'm going to stop gushing about it because I could do it all day, but I just thought that it was so incredible, and if you haven't checked it out, please pick it up. Alright, so the next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I picked up from my library, and I still have because I have not been able to take it back, and that is Slay by Brittany Morris. Now, this book surprised the hell out of me. I did not think that I was going to like it as much as I did. I thought that I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't think that it was going to be a favorite of mine. I didn't think that it was going to be a 5-star. This book is incredible. So this book follows a young girl in high school named Kiara, and she has built this VR video game for the past 3 years of her life, and she's put it together, and it's built predominantly for the Black community. For the Black community to go and explore what it is to be Black and be proud of who they are and their Blackness. And it's a phenomenal book in regards to race. But one of the characters that plays in this game dies, and so the game itself is kind of thrust into the limelight, and the question of racism comes up about this game. And it is a phenomenal book. There are a lot of racial questions that are brought up in this book that are questioned and defended and talked about in a way that's it was really graceful and important. And I think that everybody should read this because it really does make you question the things that happen in society that nobody thinks about, that nobody talks about, that nobody is understanding that's actually happening, that people are just turning a blind eye to. And I think that it was a phenomenal book for addressing that and talking about it in a way that makes sense for readers. And I thought it was great. I think that everybody should read this book. It was a 5 out of 5. Phenomenal book. I can't wait to have a physical copy for myself so that I can annotate it and go back in and tab it, because it was just an incredible read. And I think that for the audience, for young adults, I think it's incredible as well, because I think that a lot of the stuff does happen in high school. A lot of the stuff in this book has happened to me, and I think that people think that it's not a big deal until you read about it in a context like this and you're like, wow, I've done that, or wow, that's happened to me. And I don't think people realize that it's a big deal and people should be talking about it. So I definitely suggest that it's read. I know that this is another book that is talked about a lot on the booktube community and has gotten a lot of love, and I think that it is 100% warranted. I think that it's 100% warranted for the love that it's getting. So yes, I feel like I don't really know how to end off these because I could talk about these books forever, but I love this book. All right, the next book that I'm going to talk about is another book that really, really did surprise me, and that is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. When I first read this book, the first 50 to 100 pages were really, really tough for me, and that was due to the fact that it's a fantasy series, and so there was a lot of information that was given to you at such a fast pace that it was kind of hard for me to understand and grasp. But once I got past that hurdle, I fell in love with this book. As you can see, I tabbed it. I loved it so much. It is the first fantasy book that really knocked me off my feet and kind of put me in perspective. I'm like, wow, all of the other fantasy books like really didn't compare, because this is phenomenal. I loved it so freaking much. So this book is about a young girl named Esta. She has the ability to stop and pull time. She has an affinity for magic, but due to like a stone that she has that enhances her abilities, she's able to time travel. So she gets this proposition from her teacher to try time travel into the past to join a heist to steal a book that they believe will bring down the Brink. And the Brink is this magical force that strips mages of their power and possibly kills them. So throughout this book, that is her goal. She is trying to go into the past, deceive these people into trusting her, to think that she's on her team when really she is stealing it, to bring it back to the future so that she can bring down the Brink. Now, there is so much just craziness that happens in this book. There is a bunch of lies and deceit and great relationships, great characters that just have so much intrigue and development, and it's like you can't help but love them. And the ending of this book, just like, I was shook. I was just like, I just sat there kind of like with my mouth open, like, I cannot believe that that just happened. Like, seriously, I was just in shock. And this is the first book that gave me book hangover. I had to go out and purchase the book immediately after I read this because it was just so phenomenal. I'm currently in the middle of reading the second book, and it's read it. It does have a slow burn romance in this book, and when I say slow burn, I mean very, very slow. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for a predominantly romance-centered fantasy. You're not gonna find it here, but it's in there. It's just slow burn. So I would say that you should read it if you're struggling. Get past the first 50 to 100 pages, and I'm telling you, you will not be sorry. It is so good, and it needs more hype on the booktube. It needs more hype on booktube. I know that a lot of people are not talking about this book, and I feel like it should be shouted from the rooftops. It is so good. Everybody should read it. Please read it. All right, and the last book, which you have seen through this entire video because I have it on display, and that is 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. And this book was the first book that I read starting this year that I gave a 5-star, and boy, was it incredible. This book tore me apart. This book made me have all the feels. I sobbed. I got to the second to the last chapter, and I had to put this down and come out to my husband and just hug him because I was sobbing so hard. He thought that something bad happened when really I was just reading this book, and it just tore me apart. And I loved it so much. The characters in here are just so cute, and I just couldn't help but fall for them. I've read some reviews on this, and this is a very controversial book. Not a lot of people like it, but I adored it. I loved it so much, and I feel like you should just give it a chance. It was phenomenal. So if you don't know what this is about, this is 2 teenagers, and they have cystic fibrosis, and they meet during one of their visits at the hospital. She is having like a fever and some issues there, and so she goes to the hospital for this extended stay so that they can try to help her through this fit that she's having. And she meets this boy there, and they really don't hit it off at first. She hates him, and they get into this type of like helpful relationship because she has such a understanding of her disease that she takes it very, very seriously, and so she wants him to take his what is this called? She wants him to take his treatment just as seriously as she takes her treatment, and so she helps him get on track with his treatment. The problem that he has is he has a more advanced version of cystic fibrosis, which means that he can never get a liver transplant. A liver, oh my god. He can never get a lung transplant, and so he just doesn't take it as seriously as her, and she is just hell-bent on making sure that he sticks to his treatment and he gets better, and through that they create this relationship. However, with cystic fibrosis patients, they can't get more than 6 feet from each other, which this is, I'm just realizing, is very similar to our lives now, but they have to be 6 feet apart from each other in order to remain at a distance where they can't infect each other with each other's diseases. How many times am I going to say each other? So that is the premise of this book, and it is just phenomenal. I did watch the movie directly after I read this book and cried just as much. So there you go. I just have an extreme attachment to these characters, and I love them so much. I just feel like I could read this again and again and again and still cry just as much reading it the second and third and fourth and fifth time. I did tab it. I did just really enjoy this book so much, and I cannot wait to reread it, and I just loved it. So if you haven't read this book and you've read some reviews about it saying that it wasn't as good as people wanted it to be, give it a chance. I think that this book may be for some readers and may not be for others, and I can totally understand that, but just give it a chance because it was really, really good, and it just really did just tear me apart. So that's that. Okay, so that is the 5 books that I loved in this quarter. I talked a lot and blabbered a lot, so hopefully you guys found this somewhat informative and entertaining and maybe intrigued you to pick up some of these books that I talked about. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I will say that this is a little bit of a sneak peek. I have a video coming up soon where I talk about all of the books that I read this quarter, so stay tuned for that. But yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and of course leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!